Hello again, and welcome to a new episode of Two Whatever's Way Up. You may recognize me as the Pitchmaster General. I am Seth, and I'm joined as ever by our host, the professional cynic Jesse is here.
Hello, I'm here, having just walked in from work and immediately grabbed a beer.
You pitched a doozy to us today, homie. We're about to get into something hefty, and to help us with that task, we have the horror whore Hope here as well. How you doing, Hope?
I am joining you with my beer.
I
Hitachino.
got
not
my
a, s-
green
not,
beer.
not a spot, not a sponsor, but fuck, it's good.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah. So I'd like to
This movie
remind
caused
you-
existential crises across all of us, didn't it?
I need a beer to process it.
and if
Life
you'd
is
like to help-
meaningless, and there is no such thing as freedom.
If you'd like to help us process these existential feelings, you can support us on our merch store where we have hoodies, t-shirts, fanny packs, dog clothing, mugs, a shit ton of stuff available for you. You can check out our Patreon too. There's a link tree in the description of this episode if you want to check them out. I think that's it. Let's do a little housekeeping. What have y'all been watching lately? Hope, what have you been into?
Well, other than jam packing everything for our shows,
Yeah, it's been podcast watching the last couple weeks, hasn't
dude,
it?
Yeah.
we've been doing like 3-4 episodes a week. It feels, and I'm like, fuck, I have to consume all this content.
Mhm.
Between this and Helldivers, I think I've talked to Jesse every day for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and then like with me on the other end with Mind Brain, I have a collaboration with Boone and Elizabeth, and we're starting Elizabeth's nonprofit over in California. So it's been like a lot of heavy shit on the back end, like
Yeah.
starting a nonprofit.
We are busy bees, and that episode is available on YouTube right now if you want to go check that out. Jesse, how about you? What have you been up to beyond podcast stuff, or is that it?
I mean, I've been working like crazy. You've seen my schedule. You see, it's
Yes,
like
you
almost
have.
every single day I've been working. It is gonna slow down towards the middle to end of March. It slows down a little bit as we start to get to the tax season. So I haven't really been watching much. Been obviously playing Helldivers with you. That's been the obsession recently.
All I see from both of you guys is like, oh yeah, Helldivers. It'll be 3 a.m. on my lunch break at work. And they're like, oh yeah, did you just see what I did on Helldivers? And I'm like, bro, go the fuck to bed. I'm the only one who should be awake right now.
Yeah, didn't you stay up
Democracy
till like
never
4 o'clock?
sleeps. Democracy
like-
never sleeps, baby.
You stay up till like 4 o'clock in the morning one time, something like that.
The first 2 days it came out, I think I did a 4 a.m. and a 6 a.m. playing through. I was having fun.
Loud, Regress.
I felt
Jesus.
like a teenager again. It's so fun.
I haven't done that in a while. Yeah, so it's been that. So I haven't really been watching too many things. I did recently because Dune comes out tomorrow, and I am going to see it right after work. I did rewatch the original last night, the first
Okay.
part one, I should say. It's still great. I will say I do agree that the film loses steam after the attack on House Atreides. After that, it does lose steam, so there's not really an ending to the movie.
It kind of putters and really leans on that Jason Momoa death.
Yeah.
So wait, you basically did a 6 hours, like 3-hour movies back to back, basically then.
Wow.
Because you did Dune 1, and then the film we're talking about today is like damn near 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let's tee up our film then. We're talking about On the Silver Globe by Andrzej Zawalski. Zawalski.
Zulawski, I believe is how you pronounce it. It's Polish.
I'm looking at the
Zulawski.
Google.
Zulawski.
Andrzej Zawalski.
Yeah, Andrzej Zulawski. It's a Polish name. He's a Polish filmmaker.
Whoa. And not only is
Or
his name a mouthful,
was a Polish
movie's a
filmmaker. He has
mouthful.
he has since passed away.
Yeah. So Jesse,
So.
why'd you pick this one out? This is I'm glad that it's here. I'm glad this is exactly what Two Whatevers is for. What was the thought behind this one?
So I stumbled across this by, I think it was, you remember those Watch Mojo countdown lists that appear on YouTube every now and again? I think those have stopped recently.
We still
on to
do
fall
it.
asleep.
No,
Yeah.
I do What Culture Horror all the time. They
Yeah.
do
Yeah. I think maybe it
Game
may have been
ranks.
one of
I do
those.
game ranks videos like that all the time.
Yeah, I think I stumbled across like the top 10 sci-fi films you've never heard of.
Oh,
And this was like number 1 and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" So I threw it
Okay.
on and I was just like, "Holy shit. This is insane." Yeah, and I didn't know that it was not a finished movie. For the first half, you're kind of like, "Oh yeah, there's some voiceover, it makes sense." And then you get to the back half of the movie, it's like significant chunks are missing and it just jumps from
yeah.
scene to scene. It's like, "Okay, this is not a finished film." But yeah, it's the story of this film's creation is just as interesting as the film itself,
Yeah.
if not
Yeah,
more
I
interesting.
I read the backstory to this and it was insane. It got
Mhm.
like the Minister of Cultural Affairs from Poland involved. It had like the creator's grandfather involved because he was the original author. Like,
Oh.
so it took like 10 years to do this because
Yeah.
of the Cold War shit and the cultural affairs, and like it's insane.
Yeah. Communist government stepped in while the film was in production and they said, "Yeah, this is very anti-communist. You need to stop doing this now and destroy the film." So, I know that Seth, you have proclaimed that you're a communist at this point because of the way capitalism treats its citizens. When we say we like communism, let's clarify: we like the communal aspect and the way in which it distributes income to people,
So like
not the
socialism
political
then.
system.
Well,
Yes, socialism.
Socialism.
Socialism, which is not communism. They are
let,
not the same thing.
let's also be clear. This isn't communism either. This is Stalinism. This
This
is
is
a
Stalinism. This is
and
Stalin era
and
communism. Yeah.
and like
Which is
Stalin was a
borderline fascism.
maniac in his own right. Like this is a bastardization of the idea. So like no offense has to be taken to it. I wouldn't ascribe myself to anything of what that Communist Party was holding up the bourgeoisie. Like
Yeah.
literally against the Marxist ideal. No defense of that. People love their power and it distorts them. That's what happens.
I just realized I'm wearing a Handmaid's Tale shirt.
Perfect.
Totally did not plan this at all.
Perfect. Perfect. But yeah, like I mean that Stalin era communism was basically borderline fascism. That's all it was.
Like you can distort anything to any other name. Like the Nazis were the National Socialist Party, and we
Yeah.
just said
Oh, God.
we're socialists. Yeah, like everything gets distorted when you put in political military power and like real communism. The Left for Dead or not Left for Dead. The Last of Us.
The Left 4 Dead.
Actually, Left for Dead is pretty communist, and let me explain why. Give me about 5 minutes.
Oh my God. That's another podcast, babe.
You
Listen,
really got to stretch for that one, Stretch Armstrong.
Oh no, you don't. You can't play that game by yourself. You must have at least one other person. You need community to play Left 4 Dead.
Online, yes. Yeah.
No, you cannot play by yourself Left 4 Dead without the AIs. Like if you could not put a solo character
Completely on.
Left 4 Dead,
I
you'll
understand. I
die.
see.
You'll die. Yeah. Like it is inhingent on having at least one AI with you. Inhingent on that.
Fair.
Okay. Fair. But
Anyways.
anyways, this film on the Silver Globe. Yeah, so I just stumbled across it on that Watch Mojo, What Culture episode, whatever it was, and I said this is totally up my alley, and it
Ooh.
because Dune is coming out tomorrow. I saw like shades of Dune in there, and this was supposed to be released the same year as the original Star Wars. If this had come out the same year as the original Star Wars, this would have been probably just as important and just as well recognized as that. It's a very heavy film as opposed to Star Wars, which is kind of like light and airy. There's stuff in it, but it's more of just a fun adventure film. This totally the opposite end of the spectrum in every way.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like
In the first 10 minutes, we have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the way I just like would think about this film is like you sit down for Thanksgiving dinner and you gorge yourself and you're like, I'm full, and then they're like, oh, who wants dessert? And then you keep gorging yourself and it's all so good, but by the end of it you're sitting there like, what the fuck did I just do?
You're the
Like,
Baron Harkonnen having to just sit there just like all flat and flabby.
yeah. And that's how I felt. I was like, this was all so good, but what the hell did I just go through? Like
Yeah. So, in general, Hope, you said you had to do 2 sittings on this one.
I
Where
did.
at what point did you break it up?
I tried to do about halfway and halfway, and it's more so just like my scheduling because like I just haven't been able to sit down for 3 fucking hours. And because it is subtitled, I have to pay extra attention. So it also like drains me a bit to do subtitles and watch, and also how heavy the film is on top of it.
Ooh,
Mhm.
true.
It's a lot for a neurodivergent fucked up chick like me to handle.
Yeah. And you're typically
So
watching movies at work too, right?
this one I couldn't do at work. So
Oh, gotcha.
I had to do it at home
Yeah, there's
because
some not
again,
safe for work content in here.
That's
well
true.
not
That's
not
true.
not only that, but like it's subtitled. I can't like read subtitles and also like do my shit.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
When I like watch stuff at work, it's because like I'm listening to it. So, and I can't I'm not fluent in that language, so I couldn't do that.
That's true. Yeah. What about you, Seth? When you had to go through this, you watched this last night, right? Right after
I
we
did.
finished Helldivers. Yeah. You
Yeah,
watched this
yeah.
all in one sitting, right?
All straight through. Yeah. This is one of those that like if it demands a certain respect within the artistic community, I like to like give it its full go. I'm not apt to like things like this out the gate when I when it was first pitched, I was very into the idea of trying something new, and then when I saw how abstract it was the first 10 minutes, I was like, all right, let me settle in. I got to do the whole thing. If I'm going to do it, I'm not, if I break it up,
Yep.
I'm not going to come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
this is a
I'm
settler.
sorry, but real quick, was that Jesse giving you a fresca again?
No, that was artillery change out on my weed pen. My one pen died, so I had to get. Listen, you all have your
I'm s-
beers. This is my green beer.
Yeah.
No, like I have my gummies next to me, but like
I did
I
add that to the end of that episode. I clipped that whole bit out and put
good,
it at the
but
end
because
of that
ever
episode.
since
Oh,
could not,
yeah. I put it there too. I put it
Yeah,
that
there
has
too.
not
great
been able to
moves.
leave my brain.
Fresca, Fresca. Yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot of performance. This is a lot of
Yes.
artistry on display. This is a lot
Yes.
of camera work that I'm not used to. Like this is a movie that kind of asks you to grow a little bit as a viewer.
Yeah.
So, Ken, I have a hot take on this.
Yeah.
Is this the first found footage film?
Yes,
I said the same thing. Yeah. Is this the first found footage? I think it is. I think it is.
Is this the first found footage film? And typically speaking, like most found footages are horror based, and this is more of like a dramatic film.
Mm.
So, like, I thought that was super interesting to see, like, back in the 70s, 80s, and they're doing found footage esque
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's just crazy.
It all takes place from the point of view of like their transmission calls and the helmet. From what I was following, right? Like, like almost
Yeah.
entirely.
Mm-hmm. All each of them had a camera, and I think it was Jersey. He kept taking like everyone else's camera because he's
Yeah.
like, well, you're not using it, so I'll take it to when mine runs out, I'll use yours, and because he like wants to keep recording.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just looked it up. First found footage film. It brings up Cannibal Holocaust. That's obviously not true because I mean,
No.
This predates it by
I
a
guess
lot.
this predates it by a lot.
Well, what I was saying too is like this is the first like maybe not horror
Yeah.
because Cannibal Holocaust is a horror.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of found footage films are horror.
They're horror movies. Yeah.
Horror sci-fi.
So,
yeah.
and this is like the one that isn't a horror. It's a dramatic, dense thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some like
It's an existential
graphic.
horror.
There's graphic images, but it's not like horror. So
yeah.
yeah, that's just my hot take. It's the first found footage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that for straight up, like the movie presents itself as the footage contained within. And
Mm-hmm.
even like on a meta level, it explaining that there's unfinished footage. It tells you
Right.
that through actual found footage from the streets of somewhere in Poland. Was it Warsaw? I think I was reading.
Warsaw, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's as found footage as you can fucking get. Like it's borderline documentary.
Yeah.
And also, like, if he really wanted to get away with it, all that footage that they lost, like, yes, it was destroyed by the government, but they could, like, work around that, saying, like, the tapes were destroyed at X, Y, and Z points because these, like, videos, these transmissions went from, like, place to place to place, and they went through wars and stuff, so it could have just been,
Mm,
like, damaged tapes. So that
right.
could even, like, play another level into it.
Yeah, like a lot of
Yeah.
found footage now edits exactly the way you're saying. So that like it's funny that this is so predating all of that. They wouldn't have even had that as an idea, as like a place to go. You know,
Right!
there's no cultural touchstone to grab there.
They
Yeah.
were groundbreaking on so many levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any other film that's been like the government has actively wanted to destroy the film because it was.
Actually,
I'm sure Mr. Dysart could name a dozen off the top of his head.
Yeah, it's true.
so there's actually a documentary about Clockwork Orange in Spain,
Mm.
and how the Spaniard government was so against it. They wanted everything destroyed. It was banned. There were so many things, like, so there's films in countries like that where there are films, it might not have been destroyed by its original country, but there are other countries who destroyed the films or any film coming in, like contraband, basically. They like to
Yeah.
just destroy it.
Well, around that time that Clockwork Orange was made, that was a fascist dictatorship, I believe, wasn't it?
So
There you
it's
go.
again, it's the same. It's around the same time. Yeah.
People want to make really, really intrusive art during fascist regimes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's like gotta rep my Clockwork.
Right.
There you go. Nice.
So
Yeah.
what was your
For
impression?
those
jumping
of you
into this,
listening and
Jesse?
not watching, I have a Clockwork Orange tattoo.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you were saying, Seth?
What was your impression jumping into this? So you said you picked it off of a list. At what point
Yeah.
in watching did you realize, wow, I'm actually watching something super important? Is that
Well,
like
I'd seen it before, and I had
No,
I'd
like
seen
when
it.
you first found it. Like,
Yeah, I'd seen it. Yeah, it was so bizarre and weird. At the first time I saw it, I was like, I didn't quite get it. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
mm,
Now watching it, I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now
it's
as
a
time is going,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot. You got to sit with it. It's like Jodorowsky's movies. This is very Alejandro Jodorowsky,
yeah,
very much in his
stalker
style.
vibes all around in here, man.
No, that's Andrei Tarkovsky. Jodorowsky is Holy Mountain, and
Right.
yeah. But I could see Tarkovsky
the other,
in there as well.
the other Tarkovsky
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, I can see him in there as well. But there's very, very heavy subject matter about religion, sociology, how religion influences societies, how it influences culture. What is the definition of freedom? Are you ever actually truly free? Like what?
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in.
Predestination
Right.
and
Yeah.
And it's being point of viewed from such a personal space that like one of the monologues in the front half of the film talks about how escaping to this planet for the ultimate freedom trapped them with all of the things that were within themselves that they didn't like, you know, like and is that even freedom at that point if all you have the only thing torturing you now is yourself, like you're now in your own a hell of your own making. Wow, dude, what?
Like that's that makes me think of the part where Peter was talking with Jersey and he's like beating Jersey and he's like, why do you not fight me back? Why do you not fight back? And he's like, I'm happy I have you guys. He's like, well, if all you have is us, then you have nothing because we are nothing because we have nothing because we are like empty because this world has broken us. And it's just like, oh my God.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
never said where the planet actually is. In the
It's a
books it's based
moon.
on.
It's a
It's
moon.
yeah, it's said that it's supposed to be the moon, of our Earth. Um, obviously this is very kind of like very John Carter esque, where the
Mm,
story is not meant to. There's not very much science in the story. It's not about that. That's not the
right.
point.
Yeah.
Um, so they obviously the moon is gray, silver on the silver globe. Get it? Yeah, simple. Um, but in the film, it's never said where it's actually supposed to be, how far away it
Right.
is. So you could make the implication that it's some kind of twisted alternate reality or something, because another astronaut gets there halfway through the movie
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it turns out the society has been shifted because of the previous astronauts, and they believe he's some messiah, some kind of savior. He's the
Paul
Kwisatz
Atreides
Haderach.
himself.
Who the fuck? Yeah, see, it's just Dune. It's just Dune at that point, and then he's embracing his role as this new messiah savior, and in order to try and make himself feel better about how shitty he feels about his own life.
He's kind of like a Flash Gordon character. You know what I mean? He just
Yeah.
out of his league shows up and forced into a position of power.
God, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Like if
Th-
I was about to say, and it's also this whole thing. What if you think of it in biblical terms? I guess it's fine, but like me as like a pseudoscientist, whatever, it skeeves me out. Like, what was her name? Like Marta.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Mhm,
Martha.
yeah,
mhm.
Marta and beat like show her and Tomaz. They made like the child, but every other child she had was from Pedro. And then she only had one other child from Jersey, her last child. But it's like an Adam and Eve thing. Like there's so much incest going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude.
and, and
yeah,
that's like another layer to it because as we know in modern day, you know, our genomes and chromosomes can be altered and we can have diseases and alter our mind states from inbreeding. And the fact that there's a giant society now of original just Peter and Marta's, like the mother it's all the same mom. It's
hmm
Marta, you
Yeah.
know. So it's like no wonder the society is also warped because it's so much inbreeding. You know,
yeah.
again, like in a biblical sense, they're like, oh, Adam and Eve, blah blah blah. But like my rationale brain's like, ugh.
Well,
Yeah,
and
and
it's a direct satirization of what people believed at that time, that we did come from an Adam and Eve, and they're trying to say,
Hmm.
okay, let's say you're right. Let's start a whole brand new planet with
Right.
what you're saying, and let's see how this fucking plays out. And it plays out exactly the same way as it does in your
they're
Judeo-Christian
feral
Bible.
savages.
And
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, of course we don't come from two people inbreeding Adam and Eve. Oh God, no! Like you need to like lean on science for your understanding of the world a little bit. And I love the way it satirizes that, and it says, okay, fine, let's say you're right. Look at this incest orgy you have to watch now. That's what you're fucking saying happened. If you're saying
mhm.
Adam and Eve is like the correct thing,
Right. And they're praising Marta as like the
Mother
holy mother
Mary, yeah,
who threw herself through the floods and the horror to 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 create this world, you know, and
right.
it was all warped of how it came to be and just oh this movie is so dense. Like I'm
Mm.
gonna have to watch
We
this
haven't even gotten
again.
out of the first half an hour yet.
Right. No,
That's
oh
the
my
thing.
God.
Oh my god, I know. It's like I wanted to bring up the the telekinetic bird people, but I'm like,
Oh, the Sherns. Oh yeah, that effect is awesome though when they use their
oh, it's
telekinesis and
Dude,
the
beautiful.
light glowing in their head. That's
and
awesome.
direct visual resource for Jim Henson making Dark
Dark
Crystal.
Crystal.
Yep.
Dark
Yep.
Crystal. Yeah,
So
this. Mm.
I was gonna say since we're talking about Jim Henson right now, that I think is the one thing I took away most from this film is like, yeah, it's dense. You're gonna have to sit with this a while, but all I could think of was these sets are gorgeous. These
Mm-hmm.
costumes are gorgeous. These effects are gorgeous. It's all practical.
Yeah.
Like when you see the bombing, you know it's practical. Like everything was fucking
Dude,
gorgeous.
that bombing scene. Holy, that cameraman is the bravest man. The two most bronze balls that you could put on a human being running through live artillery rounds.
I was gonna
What a
say, like,
hero.
how did you guys appreciate that? Like, what was your big takeaway with that? Like, obviously, we're gonna talk about the actual story because it's a lot to chew on. But what was other than like story based? What was your biggest takeaway like that sat with you?
I wish they made more movies like this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
because you don't need tons of visual effects like CGI to make a sci-fi story. You really don't.
yes,
Like this has like what, 3 locations: a cave, a beach, and a mansion. That's kind of it. And
Yeah.
it's really it. And
well,
then
they
there's
had like a
the
field.
countryside.
Yeah, they had like a
Yeah, they
field
have the field
area.
later
Yeah,
on in the movie. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's it. It's not a lot to it.
Easy stuff
Yeah.
to source, right?
hmm
From what I was reading, the production got shut down because they were like egregiously overpricing and underworking or something like that.
yeah,
And I get the feeling that they were a bunch of artists just fucking off, having fun, like making costumes and doing cool shit in the woods. And I think the government was mad that they had found a way to get paid to do that. That like
right.
just my like as a filmmaker, my guess would be, what if you had 100 of your best friends willing to go ape shit on a beach? What kind of a movie would you make? You know what I mean? Like, how would you spend your
Yeah.
downtime? Probably smoking
Well,
weed, doing drugs, talking about religion and philosophy.
The orgies, beach
Right.
orgy.
well, there's a lot of the director in this movie because apparently
Yeah.
the backstory of the what's the name of the second astronaut that shows up? What was his name?
Oh,
Was Merrick.
Matter.
Merrick. When
Yeah.
Merrick shows up, that's kind of an allegory for the director Andrzej Zulawski.
Yep.
Because apparently what had happened was his marriage had fallen apart by that point because his previous movie, The Demon, had also been banned.
Oh no.
And so
Bangers, sounds like.
they gave him a passport to leave the country, and they said leave now. And so he
And
had to
went
leave.
France.
He went to France, and he made another movie, and they liked it so much they said, okay, you can come back now. And then he went and made this just to piss them off, basically.
Hell yeah.
And what had happened was his marriage had essentially dissolved at that point. His wife was cheating on him, and he realized it was never going to work, and so there was divorce. And the final act of the movie is basically about the perspective of that failed relationship from the wife and her new lover's perspective. Which is so bizarre. Some kind of weird therapy is going on there.
In the third part, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
duality of the third part. Yeah, there's a lot of the director in this movie, and even to the point where the final shot is of him, because the ending was never shot. So
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of therapy going on in this movie.
I wonder why. He sounds like he's struggling with a lot of intense ideas here, because he also wrote the screenplay for this as well, right? Written and directed.
Yes, it's based
Because
on
it was-
his granduncle's
grandfather's
granduncle's book. Yeah.
Oh, so he was related to the author. That's cool.
Yes.
No wonder he's working out some personal shit in there. Oh my god, he's working out some generational demons.
Well, he also did it much better than what Simon Wells did with H.G. Wells, his grandfather's book, The Time Machine. So he
Oh,
did better
yeah.
than that.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, he worked all the way up until his death. He passed away in, I believe it was 2020. Was it 2016? He passed away, and it was one movie released posthumously that he wrote. But yeah, he worked all the way up until his death.
Wow,
Good
that's
for him.
awesome.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Hope's question, because I do like that question. I think the thing that strikes me most, since last night, I cannot get over the camera work. Like we just brought up
Yeah.
the explosions,
Yeah.
but like that's
I've
only-
never seen camera work like this in 70s films.
he-
Never.
He is so intrusive on these actors. He is so live in the scene, the way he'll switch from a shoulder to make to
Mm-hmm.
just run away to another character to let you know, hey, there's side characters here too, but we're not looking at
Right.
them. Let's run back to what the camera is so frenetic and so personal. And at first I was like, this is really junior. This is really amateur. And it's not. By the middle mark of the movie, you're seeing real cinematography start to happen. And I don't know if they switched out cameramen in the middle. I'm not aware. I couldn't find anything of that.
Well, they were
Uh,
filming this for like 2 years,
yeah,
so it took a
like,
while.
and so maybe and like look at the way skills can increase across a project too. But I cannot get over how impactful the camera work is on this.
So I have a theory on that though. It could be because the camera work grew with the society, because think of the camera worker initially. They crashed. It was actually like very still, very structured. Um and they showed the two scientists in the very, very, very beginning.
Yeah,
Very structured. But then once you get to our main crew and they like crashed on this planet, it's very sporadic, it's shaky, it's very like, because they're all disoriented. They're still
yeah,
adapting. And then as you said, like towards the latter end of the first third, and then the rest of the movie, it gets so much better. I feel like that was on purpose, because you
yeah.
see like they get more settled, they get better with society, so I that's just my take. I It could be like you said, they switched out cameramen, and it's as simple as that. It could be the whole theory, like how they're like, oh, please explain why Edgar Allan Poe said the red door and blah blah blah, and there's like, nah bro, it's just a fucking red door. So I could be like making this way more than it is, but that's
Sure.
just my take.
No,
But there
yeah,
are
it was
there
just a
are scenes
theory
that
that they
stand
had
out.
swapped out. Yeah.
Well, there are scenes that do stand out when Merrick is having his complete mental breakdown while being telepathically manipulated by the Shern during the interrogation scene.
Yes.
Probably the best scene in the movie.
Yes.
And then he's about to kill the Shern and then starts talking and has that really fucked up distorted voice that's really like
Mhm.
haunting shit. That
Yeah.
best scene in the film. Best scene in the
That
movie.
was so good.
Dude, and
Oh,
like
so good.
what they're talking about there is so deep, where the Shern's like pointing out
Mhm.
that he's perfectly at balance with nature because that's all he is, and that a human being is this fucked up like spirit entering a body, and that it causes all these issues, and like that is the basis of every religion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Religion is about exploring the separation of our bodies from ourself, like the thing that pilots and receives all the information. I think in the movie they put it, the you that this is happening to,
Mhm.
talking about the experience of the body versus like the personhood experiencing it. And that's
Mhm.
in the middle of, like Jesse's pointing out, one of the best scenes in the film. It goes to one of the deepest places in humanity you could explore.
Yeah. I believe Merrick says, "I am a prisoner of my own freedom."
Yes.
Ugh.
That's a lot to swallow. It's like are they really free now that they're on this? These dissident astronauts have escaped this dystopian Earth and they're in another planet. It's like, oh yeah, we're free to do whatever we want. But it's like there's nobody there. There's no law and order. There's no government. There's no society. You don't even have any place to really live. So they resort back to being feral, like cave people. It's like, this is the best we could do. Like this is freedom. It's like, this is what you wanted. Like, okay.
Right.
All the technology to get there, and then not enough to actually develop the planet into anything.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say it's like that. Those caveat questions, like, oh, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? Okay, but this,
Yeah.
like, oh, I have the ability to fly, but you can only fly 3 inches above the ground. Like,
Mhm.
That would still be pretty creepy. I could fuck with people.
but you know what I'm saying? That's pretty much how this was. Like they got their freedom, but again, like you said, but with what?
Yeah.
How? There's no
Yeah.
medicine, there's no society, there's no civilization. They have to build rudimentary huts. Like,
Yeah. I love the way the film also like kind of pits the ideologies of Jersey against Piotr at the beginning there, where
mhm,
we're seeing the two reasons to escape, right? One of them
yeah.
is escaping themselves. Like the freedom that he was seeking, he projected it onto government and religion, but Peter had internal demons that he was running away from,
Oh
whereas
yeah.
Jersey was seeking something. He was at peace with himself and was seeking this new place and could have made a home there if it hadn't been for all the shit that got brought back with them, right? So the movie's
Yeah.
like trying to point out, if you could get to peace with yourself, you could find this freedom, but you will always be at risk of the people who won't find peace with themselves. It's like, that's so poignant.
It's like the monk versus a colonizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And
we
of
see
course,
the results of both.
yeah, and you see the colonizer, Jersey becomes a monk by the end because he can't talk to them. They don't. The new inhabitants don't speak his language. He can't talk to anybody. There's no one to talk to.
It's
Like
all grunts and unga bunga stuff to him. That's
they
so
keep
funny.
asking him, "Why don't you speak? Why don't you say anything?" It's like, he can't understand you. It's like, it's just,
Except for like a handful of words. Like
Yeah.
it's very few words he can, and then it's very rudimentary, like life, death, yes, no type words,
yeah. It's also interesting, the inhabitants, even after it's revealed that all these astronauts are just that. They're just astronauts. They're just men. They're not gods. They're not saviors.
Mhm.
Even afterwards, they're just like, whatever you say. They
Yeah.
don't believe it. Like, they'd rather have their faith than
That's
the
right.
truth.
And
Mhm.
how poignant
That's-
is that?
Every society on this planet, you could wave 1,000 truths in front of their faces, and you could just say, like, look, these books of faith are bullshit. None of this is real. And they still wouldn't believe you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was telling Jesse before we started, this movie makes me so angry that we're not going to get any more Raised by Wolves. Because Raised by Wolves was doing this
Very
like
much
this-
about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
like literally, I think there's a line in this film about being raised by wolves.
Mhm.
During one of the monologues about how men kind of reverted to their beastly form and now they're being raised by beasts, and I love that they just want to talk about the effects of like Judeo-Christianity on society and the way it just keeps ending up in crucifixions. It's just gonna
Yeah.
keep ending up in
Dude, that ending.
He
That
really got fucked
ending.
up. Oh, man.
Oh.
Oh, jeez.
and Raised by Wolves is doing the same thing about like, what if we accidentally brought a colonizing religion to another planet, and we are seeing the events unfold, just like I hope you were pointing out with Mother Mary being swept away in the flood is really just her falling down in the river. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
way we turn these like little events into these apocalyptic things. That's exactly what Raised by Wolves is doing. And so it would have been cool to see it be able to finish out like this. Now that I see where they were heading, it makes a little more sense to me.
Just think of this as like the third season.
Dude, straight up.
That-
Like, yeah, I don't need it anymore, really, now that I have this.
yeah,
Right.
of course. Yeah. How do we all feel about the third act, where it has the big shift in POV to Earth and how we see everything from the Earth perspective? Does that work for you guys? It kind of works. It kind of works for me, but not as effective as the rest of it.
It was all over the place for me, honestly. Like I
Yeah.
understood it, but because it had gone so one-sided, I guess, for so
Mm.
long with the dramatic, it wasn't even like a transition. It was just like a bam.
That's
It was like-
probably unfinished scenes that didn't show up in
Exactly.
the movie. It's like the
And
back
that's
end of
what I
this movie is
figured.
very disjointed. Yeah.
Half of it is just narration, honestly.
Yeah, half its narration. It's like they didn't have any footage. They didn't have anything.
There's a whole like gambling scene that's just excised entirely from the movie.
Yeah, it's just a whole casino thing that's not even there. It's not even present in the story. It's in the script apparently. It's not in the movie.
Right.
There's lots of stuff. Yeah.
I'm curious if like this is a movie that I could totally see getting remade, and I'm curious if we could accomplish that shift more cleanly now. But I don't think it bothered me because the opening is so bizarre with
Mhm.
the Native American headdress horse rider running up, and like the launch into the story is already so odd that by the time we shift gears back to Earth, I was like, oh, that's right. We started off on a weird Earth, didn't we? And I just kind of settled in from there. And again, at this point, I was ready for the movie to punch me in the mouth, and I'd thank it for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also my take because I did it in two separate parts. So there
Mm,
was more of a break in between the first act and the third act for me.
sure.
So I could see where you're coming from when you sat down and watched the whole thing, but like I like sat down and thought with the first half and then I went to the second, so I
Yeah.
think that might be partially why.
Hmm. Yeah. I could see a remake possibly to make it more coherent, but it wouldn't have this level of energy.
See, I would
Just
give this.
No.
I would give this to Aronofsky or Eggers. One of those two would look at this camera work and go, "I know what to do with this."
mm,
Dude, it's not even that, it's the actors. They are on an 11 out of 10 the entire time. Every
yeah,
actor, even the background actors are just like
theatrical. It's not like film acting, it's theatrical.
no.
This is
Yeah.
theater.
Mhm.
Did you guys see Climax the other year?
Oh yeah, I saw Climax. Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Lots
Mhm.
of commonality I see in between these two
Mm.
films
Give
with
this to
like,
Gaspar No. There you go. That's the director.
oh, okay, all right,
Oh,
all right. I see you, Jesse. I see you.
Give it to
ooh,
him. He knows what to do with it. He knows what to do with it.
I would check that
fair,
out. I absolutely would.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a shame this never got completed because it would have come out the same year as Star Wars and it would have probably just as maybe not as much, but reshaped how science fiction was put on screen.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
like
I think it came out properly though, not gonna lie, because
Mm,
maybe that's the Star Wars nerd in me, but like Star Wars, whereas on the Silver Globe is like definitely its criterion. It's very important to film. It's important piece. Star Wars, if it got overshadowed, like Star Wars forms like cultures. It's a pop culture icon.
it's true.
So like if it was overshadowed by this, nothing would be like it is today.
I'm also curious if an international film in the 70s has that kind of reach. Um,
I mean,
just
True.
Jodorowsky's Dune might have.
that
There's
could have.
another
But yeah,
film that was in that same time
but
frame.
but then again, Dune is the Star Wars of that era. Like if you the
Fair.
way
Right.
we talk about Star Wars now, that you could have talked about Dune back then. Just everybody would have read the book. People were really into it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I see even the honestly, the completed version of this probably goes even more unnoticed because there's less to talk about when it's not about a government intervening on your film. If you're just left to your devices, I'm really curious if it gets the same kind of attention that like coming to Cannes a decade later with all
Mhm.
of that behind it. I'm
Hmm.
almost curious if that's what created its kind of punch through moment, that the reason
The
we're even talking about it
backstory.
now. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was gonna say
This
because that's more. I shouldn't say more interesting, but it adds a whole new layer to it. Is the process of the creating of this film because of what it went through. You
Yeah.
know.
There
I
is a
think
documentary called Escape from the Silver Globe that's available. It came out, I think, about a year or two ago. I don't think it's readily available right now.
I
Um,
did see something about that.
yeah, I don't
I
know if it's readily available though.
mhm.
Escape.
Yeah, because I think
Let's.
it goes in the process of the making of, like, more
Yeah.
in depth of the making and the backstory.
Yeah, I think in this case
Yeah.
it was that old saying of all press is good press. You know what I mean? I think this is a really good distillation of like all the press that this would have got for being canceled as as we would put it now, so cutesy.
Right.
Um yeah, I think that generated its good press.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. I don't see any place to find it. Yeah.
It's also crazy. This is a teeny tiny budget. The
Yeah, it's
conversion
small.
the conversion rate is not a lot. And even if this was $58 million, I would still be like, that's not a gigantic. I mean, that's what we would give an Eggers to make a movie like this. So,
Right.
yeah, it's not a huge budget. So it's so funny that people are so pressed about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's because they were making something so good at the end of the day.
Well, you have to
Yeah.
also think communist era, 70s, 80s. You know, it was more propaganda than artistic stuff in that part of the world.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's all these other environmental factors coming in. Like it could have been $3 and they would have been like, "Oh, you're overspending your $3," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. These are the kinds of movies that should be preserved, that should be maintained. It, I think it was somebody asked Winston Churchill back in World War II why they didn't cut the budget for the arts during the conflict,
I love this
and
quote.
he said, "Well, then what are we fighting for?" It's like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah. Meanwhile, then you look a couple years ago, the Trump administration cut funding for things like libraries and art and education, like the things
I
that
got
make
so
society
mad over
interesting,
that.
the things
Yeah.
that make society grow and interesting. Like it's all business, all work, all money all the time, which makes society less interesting. Like that's the problem,
Yeah.
I remember my old boss that I used to work for back when I was working that 1 year as a personal trainer. He was a massive Trump supporter, and I mentioned that quote to him. He's just like, "Well, who gives a shit about art? Like, all we should be working for is just go to job, do your job, and do your work." It's like he's the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that would watch Starship Troopers and think it was a great ad for the military, not getting
Well,
the point.
my thing is like, okay, think of when women are pregnant, they play classical music to their children in utero. It's because that develop. It's not even just like creativity. It's a development technique. It's a development tool.
Yeah,
It grows your brain. And that's why art was created, because it helps you. That's
Yeah.
why there's
yeah.
art therapy. That's why there's music. Why do you think there's podcasts and like Spotify and Pandora and Apple it's because we rely on this. Could you imagine being in a car silent for 12 hours if you're driving? No.
Oh,
You
ugh.
need the music, you need the art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes life interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and especially to make room for art like this. Like Silver Globe is really pushing what it is to be artistic. It is really
Yeah.
asking you to kind of grow beyond, and I really respect that it's pushing into areas that are uncomfortable. Like it's
Yeah.
not super comfortable to talk about this kind of stuff. It is very confrontational, but we have to have space for the confrontational art,
Right.
That's uh
The
those
end of the movie when all the people that have lost their faith are being impaled on the beach, and they're
Ooh.
still
Crucified.
yeah, they're crucified, and they're trying to proclaim some level of faith, and like, well, this is just what has to happen. It's like, dude, your intestines are literally falling out of your ass, and you're like, and you're saying this is somehow good for you. What's wrong with you? Yeah, it's that whole ending is meant to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's true freedom, apparently.
That's true freedom, apparently.
If you want to be free, you got to get fucked in the ass.
God
God
damn.
damn it.
When I
God damn
die,
it.
you're right to do so.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, what,
But
what a
yeah,
great pick, Jesse. You really swung for the fences on this one. I'm very appreciative to have seen this.
mhm. It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a heady one, but it's worth watching. This is one that I would say is absolutely worth your time because all of the things in it are still relevant today, still matter today. Like
Oh,
remember when
no,
we talked
100%.
yeah. Remember when we talked about World on the Wire and we complained about the movie's length and the pacing and such like that? It's like because we'd all seen simulation theory stuff before. We're like, we're kind of over at this point. This stuff, we see this every goddamn day with every election cycle. All of this shit every time. It's the same goddamn thing every time. So
So
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually really excited. So it's not going to be our next episode, but the following one we're doing Fantastic Planet, and I think actually Fantastic Planet is a great like double feature for this film.
Ooh,
Mhm.
yeah, I could back to back those. Absolutely.
So I'm excited to see how we process this and then go into Fantastic Planet.
Yeah. That's going to be a trip.
I think we have a much lighter one before that, don't we, Seth?
Yeah,
Yes,
burn
there-
after
there-
reading with
Yeah,
Nick.
there's a break in between.
Yeah.
We're doing some Coen Brothers dark silliness
Mhm.
before we jump into Fantastic Planet.
Yeah. Doesn't Drive Away Dolls drop pretty soon in
I think
theaters?
Yeah.
so. I think it does.
Yeah.
It's out now, I think, isn't it?
Is it?
It might
I
be.
didn't know.
Or this if it's not now, it's like this
I've been
week or
watching for the
next week.
podcast. I don't even know what's in theaters right now. I got my Dune
Right.
tickets, and that's all I needed to know.
Yep. Name one other movie that came out recently. Bet you
Madam
can't.
Web.
Lisa Freakenstein.
Crap and eh.
We can squeak through.
But-
it.
Actually,
We're almost
Bob
there.
Marley, One Love.
Oh yeah, the Bob Marley documentary. Yeah, that beat out Madam Web. Yeah, good for you, but good for you, dude.
I don't think it's a documentary. I think it's a.
Oh, is it a-
fiction.
Oh, I thought it was a documentary. Okay.
No, it's an adaptation, but
Yeah.
still.
Oh, gotcha.
It's
Cool.
like a biography,
Nice.
which means you could watch Walk Hard and you'll know exactly all the beats. Listen, they only make those movies one way now.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got Fantastic Planet and Burn After Reading coming up. You can also check all of these out early on our Patreon. It's only $1 for access, but if you don't want to commit to anything, we have merch as well, and you can check all of those out in the link tree in the description below.
And go to the
Yeah.
YouTube channel and be sure to like, share, subscribe, everything, all that.
Yeah, the link
And
tree's
check
got it
out
all.
our TikToks and our Instagram because we always post fun stuff and clips and maybe we'll do a little something, we'll see.
We'll see. If I don't have to watch any more 3-hour movies for a minute, I might have some time.
Right. Jesus.
Yeah. No, I promise no more 3-hour movies, at least not for a while.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
we're-
you.
we're in a
You're
good
welcome.
spin now. I think that's going to do it for this episode. I thank you so much for watching and or listening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.